Satnam Karta Purkh Nirpaho Nirvair Akal Murat Ajuni Sapang Gur Prasad Jap Ad Sach Jugad Sach Happy Sach Nanak Hosi Pi Sach Ek Oankar Satnam Karta Purkh Nirpaho Nirvair Akal Murat Ajuni Sapang Gur Prasad Jap Ad Sach Jugad Sach Happy Sach Nanak Hosi Pi Sach Ek Oankar Satnam Karta Purkh Nirpaho Nirvair Akal Murat Ajuni Sapang Gur Prasad Jap Ad Sach Jugad Sach Happy Sach Nanak Hosi Pi Sach Ek Oankar Satnam Karta Purkh Nirpaho Nirvair Akal Murat Ajuni Sapang Gur Prasad Jap Ad Sach Jugad Sach Happy Sach Nanak Hosi Pi Sach Ad Sach Jugad Sach Happy Sach Nanak Hosi Pi Sach Rakho Apni Saran Prabh Mohe Kripa Tahre Seva Kachu Na Janau Neech Murakhare मान करो तुध ऊपरे मेरे प्रीतम प्यारे हम अपराधी सद भूलते तुम बख्शन हारे दंडौत बंधन अनक बार सर्ब कला समरथ डोलन ते राखो प्रभु नानक दे कर हाथ डोलन ते राखो प्रभु नानक दे कर हाथ गुरु सवारी गुरु प्यारी साध संगत जियो गज वज के फतेह बुलाओ जी वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. So initially, apologies for the technical difficulties. I think it might be the wire that's a bit messed up, but we'll work with what we have. So, to recap over the last few weeks, we've had speakers come, Gurmukhs come to talk and give their version, their discourse, a katha, a talk on the meanings and the experiences and different sakya involved with this Uttam Bani, this amazing Bani given to us by Siddhi Guru Tegh Bahadur Saji Maharaj, known as Salok Mahalla Nava. And this Bani is split up into different Saloks. So every two pankti we see, we refer to them as Saloks. And every week there seems to be a specific theme that is highlighted, because we're given 5 different Saloks to give this talk on. So today's talk we're going to be going over Salok 42 to 46. And the main theme, I feel like the main theme, the biggest theme during this specific set of 5 is to do with this thing called death, maut. That thing which the world associates to be the end date, the expiry date of this body. And where the world sees that this end date, the expiry date of this body, is the end of our life. Because what we associate with death is that there's no more progress that can occur once we leave this world. Whether you're atheist and you believe that nothing happens, or whether you follow some religion, Muslim, if you follow Islam, if you're Hindu, if you follow the Sanatan Dharma, if you're Sikh, if you're Christian, you believe there's some form of life after death. There's some form of this soul moving on to the next journey. So where the world thinks that this is the end of the journey, Dharma, that path towards that one, sees this as the very beginning of our journey. Death is actually the beginning of that journey. There's actually this Sakhi of this fakir. This fakir is referred to as a saint, especially within the Dharma of Islam. Now this fakir was really well known in his area. And he was known as a good sant. He was known as someone who was of a high spiritual stage. But the problem that he kept finding himself in was that anytime he wanted to sit and do his bhakti, sit and focus, put his chit, his pura dhyan on Akal Purkh Vaheguru, or on Allah, as they would say. Whether it was the people at home asking him to do different things and taking him away, distracting him from that bhakti, or whether he thought, oh, I'll find some peace outside. Maybe I can go out, maybe somewhere in the fields I can sit there and I can find some shanti, I can do my bhakti there. Even there, because he was well known, people from left, right and center, groups would come and they'd try to follow him around, disturb him even further, try and touch his feet. So he thought, Jalo, I've got some work to do to try and find some peace around me. And as he was walking down the street on his way home, he passed the graveyard. And as he passed the graveyard, he walked in, and on the side he'd seen this skull. Now he knew himself that that skull had been there for many years. So he thought to himself, let me take the skull home, let me wash it, I'll polish it up a bit, and in that room in my house, where I do bhakti, I'm going to put that skull on that asan, that mat that I do bhakti, I'm going to put that skull there. And what he was trying to do was going to try and serve as a distraction to others to think, by the time they, however long it takes them to figure out that that skull isn't me, because people back then were quite superstitious, in that time I'd have enough time in the day for me to focus on that bhakti in peace, in silence, because everyone's going to be focusing on this skull. Just like if you're to be farming, for example. If you're farming a certain crop, and you want to farm without the use of pesticides, X, Y, and Z, which they would have done back in the day, they would have had the main crop centered somewhere, but around that crop they would have had other different fruits or crops growing so that any pests would be attracted to those rather than attack that main crop. And it's the same thing here. They thought, or this fakir thought, let me put this skull in that place so that everyone's dhyan is focused on there, and where me as the main crop, I can sit somewhere else in peace and enjoy that idle silence, I can enjoy that bhakti elsewhere. So as one day he places that skull there, his wife, during the night, she's bringing this thal to him, this plate of food. And she's going to obviously hand that over to him to say, look, it's time to eat dinner. She walks into that room and it's a bit dark. And so she sees a skull sitting there and she's obviously frightened. She jumps, she tries to find the exit quickly as she can, she runs. And news spreads really quickly that that spot where my husband was supposed to sit and do bhakti, all of a sudden there's this skull sitting there. So the people from the local area came, they all had to look, whilst that fakir is sitting in silence, enjoying his bhakti. And obviously after a few hours, one of the people from the village realized that that skull looks very similar from that same skull that we found, that everyone knows about, that's in the graveyard. So anyways, everyone goes home. And after his, time he spent in bhakti, that fakir comes and picks up that skull and he embraces it. Because he's thinking to himself, because of this skull, it gave me some time to be able to devote that time to bhakti. And in fact, it took his contemplation to a deeper place, because he thought to himself, the reason for his ability to do bhakti was death. because that skull is what it represented death. Death is that thing that can take one onto that path of bhakti, because before that realization of death, we'll live life thinking the same thing day and night. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to eat this and that, I'm going to enjoy a bit of this and that, and then I'm going to go back to sleep. The idea of death, of having to leave this world one day or another, whether that's now, whether that's in 10 years or 20 years, doesn't often cross our minds. So what's the benefit of contemplating death? Once we sort of wave through that initial fear that, well, you know, I'm going to have to leave this world soon, and that can be a fear for people, and it most definitely is, especially for those who encounter it as it comes. When that yad meaning that remembrance, when that constant remembrance, our chit, is placed in that thing called death, then hardly we realize that there's something in us that won't die. Even though this body might disappear, even though this body might go and everything around us, what we see here, one day is all going to go, there's one thing within us that won't die. And that understanding comes with that constant remembrance, that yad of death. And when that constant remembrance occurs, and when that understanding comes, hold on, there's something in here that's going to remain, then that thirst to find that thing which lives forever, that starts to well up. Because that thing that lives forever is closer to us than our veins and arteries. But, Sangatri, that search will only take place once our hold that we have on this body, once that attachment that we have to this body, that this body is mine, that I need to take care of this body, that this body means so much to me, that needs to start to diminish. So, this is Bani from, I think, Bhagat Farid ji. Bhagat Kabir ji, I think. And they state, Garb Gart hai deh ko bin sa chin mami. Sorry, this is Bani from Sri Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Maharaj. This is the first Salok, the 42nd one. Amara says, Garb Gart hai deh ko bin sa chin mami jeh prani har jas kahiyo nanak teh jag jeet. And straight off the bat, Guru Sahib are talking about this body, and they're talking about that thing that's going to occur for every single one of us. They said that body that we're so proud of. I know some of us really proud of this body. Some of us will groom this body to X extent. We'll do X and Y in the morning, or then we go to the gym, then we'll go swimming, we'll make sure we eat X, Y, and Z. There's so many sadhana, so many tariqe that we have to make sure that this body looks the best that it can. So Guru Maharaji are saying that we are so proud of this body, but understand that one thing, that it's gonna leave us. We're gonna have to part ways from this body one day or another. It's just a shell. But interestingly enough, if we look at the Bani of Bhagat Kabir ji, what they state to us is that this journey of having to depart that body isn't complicated at all. Having to come to terms with departing the body isn't complicated at all. That if we wish, it can take place right here, right now. But it's an aukakam, it's a very hard thing to do. Is this the right slide? Oh, you're on that one. Sorry, that's the one. This is the Bhangati. Bhagat ji state, Aaj malawa Sekh Farid, Taakma kunjadiyan, Manho machindariyan. What they're trying to say to us that if we really want that merger, that complete and utter attachment, that absorption into Akal Purakh Vaheguru can happen right now. There doesn't have to be a second that we need to waste for that to happen. But there, where they're saying, takim kunjadiyan. They're saying it's a very difficult thing. Why? Because kunjadiyan refers to a flock of birds. A flock of birds that make noise constantly. They're constantly calling out. So how does that relate to us? Because on the one side, they're saying that it's a very simple thing to do. It can happen in a second. But on the other side, they're saying it's a very hard thing. Two opposites. Just like those flock of birds calling out to us on a second-to-second basis, we have these senses within us. Our eyes, our ears, our mouths. They need to smell something, they need to taste something, they need to look at something or someone. They need to hear our praise, they need to hear someone else's slander. Those are those things that are constantly calling out to us. To have to eat this, to have to taste that, to have to look at this, to have to look at that. So they're constantly calling out to us to have to indulge in this world, which are trying to, in some way, some form, to separate from. So why is it al-kakam? Because we have to learn, in order to walk this path, some form of restraint, which means some way we have to learn how to put aside these sensations and how to quieten them. Why? Because for us to obtain a greater gift, we have to learn how to leave these smaller pleasures behind. Otherwise, are we expecting to live our lives exactly how we always have and to not let go of any of our old habits? To be exactly how we were before, but then try to take on this great gift that our Guru is trying to give us. What is that gift? For most people will ask when they're Ardas, Maharaji, Kirpa, Bakshlo, get me to Sachkhand after this life. Whatever you want, however you can do it, get me there. But I'm not going to want to change anyway how I am right now. The way I am right now, if you can get me there like that, then it's a deal. Otherwise, oh kakam, you know, it's not easy. So, next slide, bro. That's the one, yeah. And in some way, we can use an analogy to try and understand what's going on here. And now imagine a farmer who decides to tend to his crops during Amrit Vela, which is probably one of the best times to do so. In that, he's had to diagana one thing, he's had to let go of one thing. Can anyone tell me what he's had to let go to have to, during Amrit Vela, tend to his crops? He's had to sacrifice one pleasure of his: sleep. One of the most noticeable pleasures for everyone, right? He's had to diagana his sleep in order to tend to his crops. Now, diagana, sometimes people think, oh, diagana is only really attached to or associated with sadhus who want to go to the jungles and stay in the jungles and diag this whole world. That is one way, obviously. That is one sadhan. That's one dharam's perspective on what tyag is, but that is not Sikhi's perspective on what tyag is. Tyag for Sikhi, tyag for a Sikh, it's a tyag, the urges of these senses. Like we're talking about those birds calling out and those birds related to our senses. Tyagana is for us to start relinquishing the hold that these senses have on us. Why? Because it makes way for this thing known as vikas, progress. Sometimes after many years, I've heard many friends, family, even myself, ask this question: why is it that we're stuck in this stage that we're in our Sikhi? Neither here nor there, neither committed, not too sort of fallen away from it, just floating in between. We're trying to figure out, why is this progress not happening like it was in the first maybe a few years of our Sikhi? Or for those who haven't been in there for so many years, for the first few months. Why? Because for that farmer's sake, by tyagana, by giving up, sacrificing his sleep, his crops have yielded to such an extent, once he sold them off, he's gained such a profit from that. The question is, if in this body of ours, if we filled it with so much ras of this world, if it's filled to the brim with so many pleasures of this world, external sources, our friends, pleasures that we have, gadgets, things that we own, food that we eat, things that we drink, then where is the space for Naam to come and sit? How are we going to give it space for Naam to come and sit? It can't even enter this body, let alone find a place to find a seat. And then the question is, then how do we expect this ras from Dharam, this ras from Paramatma, Kal Purkh Vaheguru, to begin to grow within if we're not giving it the space to do so? Next slide, bro. So there was a rishi. A rishi is also known as like a sadhu. His name was Rishi Devgiri, and during the time of Guru Angad Dev Sahib Maharaj, he decided to come and have their darshan to meet them. And this rishi was known as a hikmat, he was known as an apothecary, someone who can create medicine. And he was really good, especially these rishis, they used to live up in the mountains, so any free time they had, they would devote it to finding as many herbs as they could and coming up with these solutions for people's ailments. So as he came to visit Guru Angad Dev Sahib Maharaj, he had so much prem for them. And along with him, he brought this cloth. In that cloth, he'd wrapped this fragment. It looked like a shell. And inside that fragment, he said to Guru Angad Dev Sahib Maharaj, if you take that fragment and you rub it against any copper or any iron, it's going to transform that copper or iron into gold. And you can use that an unlimited amount of times. No matter how many times you use it, it's always going to give you more and more and more. So it's like a lottery ticket. It's like a lottery ticket that's going to keep paying you. That's what he was given to Guru Angad Dev Sahib Maharaj. Because he thought to himself, you and the Sikh around you are doing seva for everyone. So you're going to need this money. You're going to need this gold to be able to help you in your seva. And this is my way of giving you peta. My way of giving you some form of money to help that cause. So Guru Sahib Ji took a look at that and they returned it instantly. They gave it back to the rishi. And they stated that Guru Sahib Ji stated about themselves, we already have such a medicine which not only transforms someone externally from gold, but also transforms them internally from gold. And Sangat, I'd like to ask you a question. What do you think that thing is that Guru Angad Dev Sahib Maharaj said that we as a Sikh have, which can transform anything externally, internally into gold? Hanji Mataji? Naam Simran. Yeah, you can say Naam Simran because it's connected to the same thing. Any other answers? Gurbani. Hanji Singh. Gurbani. Gurbani is jag meh janan. Garm vese mana aaye. In this world, Gurbani is realized as that light. So they state that is this philosopher's stone that we have in Sikhi is Gurbani. But there's another pankti. Gur paras hamlo milkanchan hoya ram. Gur paras, Guru Sahib Ji are this philosopher's stone. Hamlo, and I am this slab of iron. When both of them meet, that philosopher's stone transforms that slab of iron into gold. And next slide, bro. Guru Sahib Ji state that the position that someone, and they were talking about themselves, that we might find ourselves in if we use that fragment constantly, is that, okay, chalo, one day I'm going to transform 1 kg of copper into 1 kg of gold. And then the next day is going to be 10 kgs. Then the third day is going to be 100 kgs. And what's going to happen is my entire focus, my dhyan, is going to be placed on ensuring that 1, no one steals this gold, and 2, that I can care for it, that I can keep it safe. And as a result, the entire mission for me, this is Guru Sahib Ji talking, coming to this world to connect the Sangha to Gurbani, that's going to fall flat on its face. It's going to be completely affected because all my Shakti, all my power is going to be focused on keeping this gold intact. So all the which, what can we take that Naam is the most uttam thing in this world? Prabhaga Simrana Sabde Ucha. we hear in Sri Sukhmani Sahib, Prabh ka simran, sab de ucha. That simran, as Mataji said, Naam simran Bakal Park Waheguru, sab de ucha is the most uttam thing in this world. Sarb dharma, mahshrest dharma, the most uttam, the highest dharma of all is known as Har ko naam jap nirmal karm, is japping that naam of Hari Parameswar Waheguru. So we link back to that point that we made on keeping our dhyan, our remembrance on death, yad on death. That is a part of dharma. We hear the other pankti, Pehla maran kabool, jeevan ki chhad aas. Maharaj says, forget talking about any paths, any spirituality, any ways of breathing, any ways to sit in a certain asana, any yoga techniques. Before that, Pehla maran kabool, understand what it means to give yourself to your Guru. Pehla maran kabool, jeevan ki chhad aas. Maharaj says, forget even thinking about living, understand what death means first. And if that's the first thing that's placed in our being, dharma. For example, before we even start our daily duties, if we can connect to that thing before we even walk into and step and start interacting with this world, or even thinking about the upbringing of a child, even the upbringing of a child, if that child has connected to dharma before they've connected to maya, because that's inevitable, it's going to happen, then that person, that being, can tolerate the effects and the boards that Maya places on us on a whole different level. But if it's the other way around, that before we've even connected to that thing called dharma in the morning or in our lives in general, before that naam has had time to settle within us, and instead we're being attacked by that thing called Maya, then we're going to drown. Why? Because Maya is a huge power. Maya is a huge power. Think about this. Imagine you decided to take a pet lion home or a pet tiger. You know, you see all these videos of like Arab men with these tigers in the back garden on these huge cages. And as soon as they walk in, they realize that this tiger's not here to be friendly. And as soon as they walked in, they're trying to find that exit even quicker. Imagine you took a tiger home. The whole point of these men taking these tigers home is that they've got this cage built around it, something that's even more powerful than that tiger to contain that power, because if they just brought that tiger home and they left it in the garden, within a day or two, their whole family would be taken and ripped apart. Because Maya, or that tiger in this instance, is such a great power. To leave it unattended, to leave it uncontrolled, is the same as leaving a lion loose in your house. So therefore, the dharma, or in this case, the cage, is the ability to be able to control that power more so than what that power can give off. It's more powerful than that power, so it can control it, it can contain it. Next slide. This is a pankti. And what Guru Sahib Maharaj is saying is, Hasti sir jo ank sah, aharna syon sir de, mantan aage rakh ke ubi sev kare. And what Guru Sahib Ji are stating here is just like that power of Maya was huge. In this instance, that power of an elephant is just as huge as well. The power of an elephant, think about how many tons it weighs and how much, if it was just to run at you at 10 miles an hour, it would probably wipe out a car, let alone a human body. Guru Sahib Ji is saying, if any of us are able to learn how to use that ankus is a tool that's, if anyone rides an elephant, if you've seen it in movies, or unfortunately, if you might have seen it in real life, what they do is they use this rod to smack the head of the elephant to be able to direct it, to tell it where to go. So, in essence, that elephant, its master, is that ankus. And if you're able to understand and learn how to control that ankus, then you've got the ability to control the huge power of an elephant, i.e., in other words, you've got the ability to understand how to control Maya. So the question is now, how does one obtain this thing called an ankus? And that second half of that pankti, Aharana jo sir de. Aharan is known as this anvil. If anyone watched Lord of the Rings or, I don't know, any other films, one anvil is this huge block of metal, and any tool, any sword, or anything of metal can be forged by putting it into a fire, placing it on top of that anvil, getting a hammer, and you just smack that metal until it goes into the shape that you want it to go into. So the reason that they've used this analogy of an anvil is for us to be able to obtain this thing called an ankus, to be able to control that thing called Maya. We have to understand, just like how that anvil will over and over again will take that strike of that hammer. Over and over again, it will saharna, it will take that strike of that hammer. No matter how many times that hammer strikes, that anvil will never say no. It will continue to take that beating. It will continue to take those strikes. And there's another point, another good characteristic of the anvil is that the more it gets struck, the further it bows down to the earth, because obviously that metal is getting struck more and more and it's being formed further down. So this point of humility then comes into that anvil. Just like we, as a Sikh, will take that jot from our Guru, and we'll see in a Sakhi later how that works. We'll take those strikes from our Guru. Why? It's not we're taking it. We're not taking them physically. We're not taking them mentally. Our home, our ego is taking that strike, because that's the aim of a Sikh. You get rid of the home, you meet your Guru. And the flip side of it is your Guru is the one who's going to be hitting those strikes on your home. But just like that anvil, that's our home. The more it can sahar those strikes from our Guru, from our Guru's bachan, from Gurbani itself, then hardly, the more we start to bow down in humility. And then, Eon Gurmukh aap navarya sabraj srishta ka de. We link this back to that first salok of the 42nd salok. At the end of that pankti, Maharaj is talking about how one ends up being able to conquer this world. And it's the same analogy that's given here, that by being able to take those strikes from our Guru, for this home to get completely obliterated within. Or the Vita Sangatji, this is a great gift that we get from our Guru, which is that Gurmukh obtains this world. This Gurmukh obviously merges back into that jot of Akal Purkh Vaheguru. Now it's important to note something, that in Sikhi, it's not about who we can become. It's not about what we can become. Or it's not about protecting the way that we are within, but doing everything externally. Sikhi is about how much we're willing to let go of this home. That is what Sikh is. Whether we understand the effect this ego has on us, and then from then on out, how much we're willing to let go of it. Guru Angad Dev Saji Maharaji, before they were known as Guru Angad Dev Saji Maharaji, before they were blessed with that Gurta Gadi, they were known as Bhai Lehnaji. They were the second Guru, passed on from Guru Nanak Dev Saji Maharaj. And the first time that they had darshan, they met Guru Nanak Dev Saji Maharaj. Guru Nanak Dev Saji Maharaj asked them, Purkha, what's your name? And obviously, he says, my name is Lehna. And the bachan that Guru Nanak Dev Saji Maharaj gave to them was, Tu Lehna, Asi Tera Dena Hai. So Bhai Lehna ji, that bachan had quite a lot of effect on them, because they went home and they decided from there on out that they're going to serve the Guru wholeheartedly. They packed their bags, they packed their essentials, and they were on a mission to make their way back to Guru Nanak Dev Saji Maharaj. And just to point something out here, their intention was never to become the Guru. Just like we said before, the intention of any Sikh is never to become something. The intention of a Sikh is to let go. And as they set off, because their family were pretty well off, and in fact, their family wasn't from Sikh heritage at all. Their family, none of their family was Sikh before. So their family was well off, they earned quite a few shops. So from that shop, they thought, I should really bring a gift to my Guru. So they, very interestingly, they brought a block of salt. And the second thing that they brought was this mat. It was made of spear grass. It's called dab in Punjabi. It's like, if you think of bamboo mats, that's probably the best similarity we can have. Bamboo mats, they're probably used for people to sit on. Maybe in the bar, they would lay them on the floor back in the days, just as a sort of a cushion. So they took this one mat, and they took this huge block of salt. Next one. So as they arrived to Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Maharaj in the Sangat was sat there just like we are here. Bhai Lerna ji arrived and they placed that block of salt right in front of Guru Sahib ji with that mat. And the Sangat start questioning, look, what kind of gift is this to give to your Guru? No one ever in the past has brought these type of items to you, Guru Sahib ji. Why has he bought this? And Guru Sahib ji stop all this murmuring. They say, what Bhai Lerna ji brought was the correct thing, was the perfect thing. And when the Sangat asked why, Guru Sahib ji said that this path of dharma is very bitter, just like the taste of salt. We taste salt on its own, it's not very good. It's very bitter taste. That mindset, that understanding that this path of dharma is bitter was already instilled within Bhai Lerna ji. Before they'd even started to walk that path, they just arrived. They came to Guru Sahib ji's charan with that understanding firm in their mind, that this is a very difficult path. And Sangat ji, this is an important point to make, that if anyone preaches that walk in this path is going to be full of peace, full of sukh, full of bliss, chalo, those things are going to happen. We read in Gurbani, it's going to happen. Look at the whole of Anand Sahib. But Sangat ji, that's only one side of the coin. That's only one side of the coin. Because there's many challenges to overcome. Just like any sukh in this world, also, that's one side of the coin. You're going to meet dukh too. So yes, this is a very bitter path. But once we learn how to take those servings of salt with passion, with a keenness, with desire, or the which Sangat ji, then we will start to receive that taste of Amrit, that Amrit Ras will start to fill us within. And we ourselves will experience something that only we can communicate with our Guru. Just like that farmer has to wake up early and sacrifice his sleep, well, that's not an easy thing to do. That's a very bitter thing to do, especially in the winter. Who wants to let go of their rajai? Who wants to let go of their duvet and step out into that cold? So that block of salt was an indication that the start of this path is going to be bitter, and Bhai Lerna ji is saying that I accept it. Bitter means it's going to take a lot of effort. It's not actually going to be physically bitter. It's going to take a lot of effort. And there's going to be a lot of things that someone's going to have to adjust to. And that mat made from spear grass, there's a pankti, I've actually forgotten it now, but that mat made of spear grass was an indication to show, if you see how this mat is made, what it is, that grass has to be cut. Obviously that grass is growing in some sort of nadi or somewhere. That grass has to be cut. Once that grass is cut, then it has to be slammed and flattened for it to be usable, for it to be of any use. So the analogy of that mat is that anyone who's able to walk this path and they receive this gift of humility, they're humbled by this path, and they remain steadfast through any difficulty, then they receive this thing known as Parvanata. They are Parvan in the court of Guru Sahib Ji. Next slide, bro. So this is the next slide, and this is the next Salok. We've got Jehe Kat Simra Naam Ko So Nar Mukda Jaan Tehe Nar Har Antar Nahi Nanak Sachi Maan. Now Guru Sahib Ji is stating that that person who meditates and remembers Akal Purakh Vaheguru is liberated. And as a point that's always made in Sikhi is, what is liberation? In the Buddhist Dharam, they will refer to this as nirvana. Hindu Dharam, they've got their own way of explaining it. So does Islam. And then Maharaj is saying that there's no difference between that person who is completely liberated and Akal Purakh Vaheguru Ji themselves. So just to touch on that first Bhangati, if anyone knows Bhai Veer Singh Ji, they're a very avid, very well-renowned Guru Sikh from the past. They've written many books and has helped so many Sikhs on their journey over the years. They were actually known as, probably still are revered as, one of the most prolific Punjabi poets of all time. Not only did they write books, they wrote many poems too about spirituality. And even in these books, they explained their very own spiritual experiences, because they were of a very high avastha. Not that I would know, not that I can see that, but obviously as other Gurmukhs have praised them for their efforts and their kamai, they were of a very high spiritual avastha. And one day they said, this is their own experience. They said this new person started to come to Sangat. And before he was doing X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden he'd stopped as soon as he came into Sangat. Every single day was like an addiction to him. He couldn't get enough, this person. So for 2 months, lagatar, he would come every single day. And then all of a sudden, after 2 months, he passed away. And Bhai Veer Singh Ji thought to himself, Chalo, he's got a lot of labh from coming to Sangat. There's a lot of profit he probably took, a lot of spiritual profit that he took from that. But 2 months is probably too little for anyone to gain this liberation. Because liberation comes with a lot of work. Think about how many lifetimes and lifetimes you spent on this earth, and there's a reason we're coming back, because we haven't attained that liberation. But as a result, we keep taking this this dirt on, and those layers keep piling up higher and higher above that soul. That's why there's a disconnect between us, our soul, our Atma, and Paramatma. So they thought 2 months is probably too little time for anyone to have to clean themselves completely and go back to their true home. And what they experienced themselves was they saw the journey that his soul took. This man who was spending 2 months in Sangha, they saw the journey with their own eyes. Up until the point that he got to Dharamraj's court. So obviously in Sikh you have this concept that before your next the next movement that your journey is going to make, whether it's in another body, whether you're going to Nark, whether you're going to Sachkhand, this being known as Dharamraj is going to read out your lekha. So everything that you've done, your thoughts, your actions, what you've said, all of those are going to be read out by Dharamraj, and then, you're going to be judged there and on the spot. And as he was getting judged, Dharamraj looked at him and said, well, you got loads of karam to work out. And there's a whole list full of stuff here that you haven't managed to fix. So you're going to have to go back. But they were stuck in one confusion. Why? They could see that in his heart, that naam had somehow made its way there. And there's this philosophy in Sikhi that when it comes to our voice is projected from our nabi, our belly button, it's created there. That vibration is created there. And then it moves to our heart, it comes to our throat, and then obviously it's expanded outwards through our tongue. And that jugati for Simran is to now repeat with his tongue, to bring it back to the throat, to bring it back down to the heart, to bring it back to his origin. And he'd got to that point where he somehow, in 2 months, got that Simran, just like we would repeat Simran, and that vibration takes place in our tongue. and then it will take place in our throat. What it means is if it starts to take place in your throat, it happens by itself. It's like a jukebox, like a music box that constantly runs even when you're not speaking. That's an avastha to reach. And it goes so deep, it goes to your heart, that Gurbani is, this naam is constantly going without the need to say anything. And that's where this Guru Sikh, this Gurmukh who had sat in Sangha for 2 months, that's the avastha he reached. So Dharamraj was confused because he thought he's got all this lekha to have to live out. But his naam, that naam has now sat into his heart. But they thought, Chalo, I have to send him to Nark. That is a process by which this game is played. So they send him to Nark, and obviously Bhai Veer Singh is watching this. They send him to Nark, and as soon as his feet touch Nark, everything goes cold. That was the whole point of Nark. Oh, I wish I had the picture of Bhai Rama Singh Ji when they experienced what Nark was as well. They only used to live in Hounslow. As soon as his feet, that person who spent 2 months in Sagat, his feet touched Nark, everything went cold. We hear in Sri Sukhmani Sahib, Galatati Thanda Harnao. That thing which is, that ember which is burning so brightly, so fiercely. Galatati Thanda Harnao, that Hari Naam, that Naam of Hari Parameswar is the only thing that will be able to cool it. As soon as his feet touched Nark, everything went cold. Boiling cauldrons, whatever it was. And those Jamadut whose duty was to torture people, they thought, I don't want to be here anymore. The whole point of me being here is to torture people. Without that, I have no pleasure. There's no pleasure in me being in Nark if these people aren't being tortured. So they go up to Dharamraj. And Bhai Veer Singh is watching this. They go up to Dharamraj and say, you sent someone down there who has completely made everything cool. We can't do our work. Bhai Veer Singh Ji looks at Dharamraj, he's soaked in water himself. He himself is soaked in water. And they said, these Jamdut said to Dharamraj, you've got to get him out. Whoever you sent down there, you've got to get him out because he's ruining our job. So I thought that was a good story that I heard when it comes to that person who meditates. Jihe kad simran Ram ko, so nar mukda jaan. And Sangati, there's generally 2 characteristics that a lot of us might see Akal Purkh Waheguru with. And some of us might see Akal Purkh Waheguru as this forgiver, Pyar Karan Wala. Some of us might see him as this staunch, strict, something to be feared type of person. This being that needs to be feared. And the truth is, when it comes to Guru Sahib, it's widely known that Maharaj is Veparva. Veparva means that they have no real care in terms of what happens because they're the ones controlling it. It doesn't mean that they don't care about you. It means that whatever happens, they have no care about whether it's a positive or negative thing. There's no need for positive negativity when it comes to Guru Sahib. So the way in which Guru Sahib Ji work in this instance, there's many ways in which they work, is that the intention in which we approach Guru Sahib Ji with is likely what we're going to receive from them. So for example, those people who have truly realized their faults within, they've put in that work. They've understood within, they've gone that deep to understand their faults. Like Guru Sahib Ji say, "Jion paave tiura khla hai, hum saran prabh aaye ram raje." However you want me, Maharaji. Jion paave tiura khla hai, hum saran prabh aaye ram raje. I've come to your sanctuary now, Maharaji. Take me in. Hum pool vigar hai dinis raat, har laaj rakhaye. I am forever, I always forget you. Hum pool vigar hai dinis raat, day and night I forget you. Har laaj rakhaye. Now take me, Maharaji, and save me. Hum barak तू गुरपिता है, दे मत समझा. I am your child, Maharaji. You're my father. And give me this understanding. Give me the understanding that I need to be able to connect back with you, Maharaj. If someone comes to Guru Sahib Ji with that intention, then they don't waste a single time They don't waste a single second in saving someone. But on the other side, no matter how spiritually elevated someone may be, if that person approaches Guru Sahib Ji with maan, with pride, then Guru Sahib Ji will show no parva. They will show no care in that instance. So the point here is, just like Bhai Lerna Ji, now known as Guru Angad Dev Sahib Ji Maharaj Ji, provided that salt, provided that mat for us to understand there's a big thing in this thing called Nimrta. Just like that person who spent 2 months in Sangat, and the only way for that Naam to have Vasana in his heart was obviously one of those big factors was Nimrta. The question here is, how does Nimrta, humility, true humility, because I can listen to a talk on humility, I can listen to someone talking about humility, I can read a Pangati about humility, I can listen to Kirtan about humility, but then I'm going to go home and there's going to be another version of me that's going to live out my day to day until I come back here. Or the which I haven't learned anything, I've just understood it. I haven't taken on anything, we just listen to it, it's come in one ear, it's gone out the other. So how do we understand what true humility is and how do we apply that to our lives? And then where does it lead us to? What is the purpose of humility? And there's two really big gifts in the house of Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji Maharaj Ji. The first is known as tars, and the second is known as meher. At the end of, or towards the end of Sri Dehra Sahib, we will hear, Tera kita jato nahi, mainu jog kitoi. That what you've done for me, Maharaj, I have no idea. What you've done for me, I have no acknowledgement of it. Tera kita jato nahi mainu jog kitoi. Main nirguniyare ko guna nahi. Look at the humility someone's coming to the sharan, the sanctuary of Guru Sahib Ji. Main nirguniyare ko guna nahi. I have no gun, I have no virtue, Maharaj. Main nirgun are ko guna nahi. Ape tars payoi. That is a point in which, when someone hits that level of humility, that is a point in which this thing known as tars becomes available to that Gurmukh. Then, tars paya, now Guru Sahib Ji has given that tars, they've given that pity to that person. Because the truth is, we read Gurbani, on the one side, we'll be told by Guru Sahib Ji, we have to put in the effort. We saw that earlier in this talk. We have to put in the minute. We have to give that. But on the flip side, Guru Sahib Ji will also say to us, no matter how much effort you put in, no matter how much jap tap, no matter how much simran you do, no matter how much seva you do, it's never going to be enough. And it could possibly get us into that mindset of, well, what do we do then? How much do we do then? Tars paya mehramat hoi. In that moment, when you've come to that point to understand who you truly are. Tars paya mehramat hoi, and someone's taken pity on you, that your guru is seeing that you're trying to do everything that they've asked you to do, and things still aren't happening. And they take pity on you in that moment of humility. Tars paya mehramat hoi, that's when they bless you with this thing called meher. Meheramat hui, they bless you with their mercy. Sadhu Guru Sajjan Miliya. And you meet Guru Sahib Ji as your Sajjan, as your true friend. Next slide. Just like that person who spent 2 months in Sangat, God only knows what exactly was happening. But for someone like Bhai Veer Singh Ji to be able to see that, and they were already at very high avastha, or the rich Sangat Ji, humility plays a big role in trying to get someone into that. Because in today's day and age, the way that the world works is completely an opposite direction to how Sikhi works. The world is trying to go this way, boost our pride, boost our ego, but Sikhis going the complete opposite way. If you think about a seed, before it can grow into a tree, it has to be dug deep underground for it to sprout. Once it's sprouted, even then, it has to take some time underground for it to work its way up, and only then you're going to start to see 1 or 2 sprouts coming out of the ground. But years later, because it was able to go deep down into that soil, into humility, as it's grown, as the years have grown past, not only has it been able to provide shelter for everyone around it, but it's continued to start to reach for the stars, to reach for the sky. So now we move on to the next salok, which is Ek Bhagat Bhagavan, Jeh Prani Ka Nahe Man, Jaise Sukar Swan, Nanak Manu Tahitana. So just like we mentioned before, we're used to this notion in Gurbani that the way that we think, the way that we are, it affects us mentally. But here, very interestingly, Guru Sahib just started with how it affects us externally. How does it affect this body before we even think about the mind? Next slide, bro. Actually, go back one. So Guru Sahib is saying that that person who does not feel devotion to Akal Purkh Waheguru, who doesn't feel the need to have to sit there and devote time, do that bhakti for Akal Purkh Waheguru, Maharaj is saying, Jaise Sukar Swan, they are known as a dog and they're known as a pig because they're going to act in those ways. Their mannerisms are going to be exactly the same. So next slide. So just to quickly go over these points, because we haven't got much time now. There's 3 characteristics of a dog. Obviously, you've probably seen loads of these dog videos online where people are like, oh, dog's a man's best friend, X, Y, and Z. Yes, 100%. They're very loyal, and they always will be to the masters. That's probably one of their biggest virtues, but sometimes we overlook the bad characteristics of these animals, whether it's a pig, whether it's a dog. Now, the 3 characteristics of a dog which aren't so great. 1 is that just as much as they're going to bow down and fold their ears and fold their tail in greed, basically, to get something, especially slightly more vicious dogs, in a matter of fact, what they're doing is they're pretending to come to you in nimrta. They're pretending to come to you in humility. Why? Because they got greed for something. They just want something from you. Or the which, once they receive that thing, they're going to walk off. They're going to walk off. So that's one bad characteristic of a dog, which is in greed, in this attachment to greed. They're going to play a certain role. They're going to play a role of nimrta just to get something from someone. And you can see that in human beings too. Sometimes we see people bowing down to everyone, thinking that or making it out as if that they're the lowest of the low. But all they're really trying to do is actually one form of Rajniti. It's a form of politics, which is you bow down to someone to pretend to make it out as if you're out looking out for their best interest, you're out to be their friend. In reality, any moment that comes, you're going to take advantage of them. Just like that dog. Second bad characteristic of a dog is that, again, they're filled with greed. So in the dog's case, imagine you're giving them a bowl of food and they're gnawing away at it. And then you bring another bowl of food, and before they've even finished the first one, they're going to go into the second one. They're going to go into the second one. They're going to let anyone near any of their bowls until they themselves have finished. And those are the same characteristics we can see in human beings as well. Greed, whether it's to do with food, whether it's to do with possessions, money, X, Y, and Z, it's the same thing. Now the third characteristic, which isn't that great from a dog, which is ungratefulness. And you can see, I'm not saying every single dog does this, but this snappy nature. Those who do the par upakar, who do good, and I'm not going to talk about the dog now, I'm going to talk about a human. Those who do good for humans. Imagine we have mothers, we have fathers. Imagine they've done all they can for us in our lives, and we grow up to be these people who gnaw and we snap at them every time we feel like things aren't going right in our lives. It's exactly the same as the dog. Anytime someone tries to feed him, tries to clean the dog, X, Y, and Z, they're just going to snap away in ungratefulness. So these are 3 characteristics, bad characteristics of a dog. 1, bowing in law, but bowing in greed because they're doing it out of fake nimrita, so they take advantage of whoever it is, and you can see that in humans. The second one, which is they're filled with greed. No matter how much you put in front of them, they're going to want more and more, and it's something you see in humans as well. And then the third bad virtue, bad characteristic of a dog is this ungratefulness, this snappy nature that no matter how much good someone's done for them, they're going to try and bite. And now the characteristics of a pig, because there's obviously two examples that are given here. Now there's only really one birthi, only one mindset of a pig. Next slide, bro. And that is explained here. Bhagat Kabir ji say, Kabir sakat te sukar pala rakhe acha gao. Oh sakat bapura mar gaya. Koi na laha now. Bhagat Kabir ji is saying that even a pig is better than that person who has no faith in the God Purak Waheguru. Because it's at least that pig has one virtue, even though it might see itself as an avgun, as a demerit, is that it's going to clean any filth around it. So what Bhagat Kabir ji is saying is that pig's life is better than that of someone who has those characteristics of a dog. Why? Because at least they do this one thing, is that they clean up after any mess around them. They clean that village up. So essentially, that pig is providing a service to society, is providing a service to those around it. And is providing a service, one extra service more than that faithless cynic, as Bhagat Kabir ji are explaining. So whereby that pig is cleaning up that mess, that cynic, that faithless cynic, fills this earth with dirt and leaves this world by doing so. For example, when someone begins to live below the standard of virtue, because there's this standard in which most of society lives by, right? As soon as someone starts to live below that standard, below that conduct within society, then once that person leaves this world, what they leave behind is this history of the past. Such a past with such a horrid stench attached to who they were. Mistreatment, belittlement, ignorance, cheating, lying, stealing. So much so that Sangat, you might have also experienced in our own lives, that if we do know someone, if we've known someone in the past that's like that, they've left this world, we might attend their funeral, they might have been close to us, they might be sort of a distant relative, a friend even. And when someone who doesn't probably know them as well has asked us, how did this person pass away? How did this person pass this world? And you start to explain exactly how they passed. They might have been drowned in alcohol, they might have been overdosed on drugs, or whatever it was. Then you start to explain to this person what this person was like, not out of nindya, just stating facts. Those people who ask that question are going to stop you halfway to say, let's move on to another subject. I don't want to hear this. Why? Because the nature of that cynic is such that any attempt to describe their life is not worth it. And that's what Bhagat Kabir ji are saying here, that once that person leaves this world, no one's even going to mention their name. So then, go back one side, bro. Just to go back, one more. To that Salok, where Maharaj says, know that this body is like that of a pig or a dog. Guru Sahib is stating that that person who doesn't decide somewhere down the line that there's a better way to live life, and that better way to live life is through this dharma, through our Guru, through Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj Ji, then you will find yourselves, or we will find ourselves, whether it's us or whether it's other people, that the characteristics of that being is going to be very similar to a dog, to a pig. 2 more slides. One more. And this is the second last salok, which is interesting, because what Maharaj is saying is, Swami go grih jo sula swan tajne hinit nanak ehbad harpa jo ek man ho ek chit. Maharaj is now giving the opposite of what they just said. And you find this in Gurbani, which is, if they give an example, they'll give both sides. They won't just give one. And here Maharaj is saying that the bad virtues of a dog was given. Now what's the good virtue of a dog? Is that it never abandons the home of its master. So just to quickly go over this Sakhi before we finish off, which is, one day this really beloved Sikh of Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj Ji, known as Bhai Nand Lal Ji, he was the greatest poet in the court of Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj Ji. He was able to give translations and discourses on granths, on kitabs, on even the Quran, better than anyone in the land at the time. He was so learned, he had so much gyan, and he had so much praying for Guru Sahib. And one day, he saw Guru Sahib Ji sat eating langar, and he decided to grab a thali and sit next to them. He sat on the floor, they were sat above. And next to Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj Ji was a dog. And what Bhai Nand Lal Ji was seeing was every time that Guru Sahib would take a burki to eat, they'd take a handful of roti with some sabji to eat. Every now and then, they'll throw it towards the dog, and the dog will happily eat it. Over and over again, they'll take a burki. Over and over again, then they'll throw one to the dog. And Bhai Nand Lal Ji, they put their hands together and they asked Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj Ji, Maharaj, can you throw one of those burki onto this dog as well? They're referring to themselves. Throw one of those burki onto this dog as well. And before I heard the end of the Sakhi, I thought, wow, that's a lot of nimrata to have to call yourself a dog in front of the Guru. And Guru Sahib Ji looked at Bhai Nand Lal Ji and they looked at their plate again. They didn't say anything. They got another burki, they ate it. They got another burki, they fed their dog. And Bhai Nand Lal Ji were confused. And then Guru Sahib Ji said to them, you're not ready yet. Imagine that. Imagine saying to someone who is probably the most learned poet, the best poet, the most knowledgeable person in the area at the time, that you're not at the same level as this dog is. And so Bhai Nand Lal Ji sat there for a while contemplating that. What Guru Sahib Ji was seeing happening inside Bhai Nand Lal Ji is what hundreds of lifetimes of tapasya cannot do. But just one bhajan from Guru Sahib Ji can. Was that jot, that strike against that home, that ego of Bhai Nand Lal Ji. And after a while, when Bhai Nand Lal Ji had some courage to talk again, they said, Guru Sahib Ji, what's the difference between me and this dog? Is there a difference? And Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj Ji says, yeah. The difference is that you asked for a burki, this dog never has. He said, Guru Sahib Ji said, that no matter where I go, this dog follows me. No matter where I am, what time of the day I'm out, it's going to follow me. No matter if I keep it in the house or I put it outside, that dog's going to stay there. They said, I've even gone to the extent of not feeding it for multiple days to see if that dog is going to leave me, and the dog never left my side. And Bhai Nand Lal Ji understood exactly what Guru Sahib Ji was saying. Just as Guru Sahib Ji did with Bhai Nand Lal Ji. Next slide, bro. Just as they were doing with Bhai Nand Lal Ji to break their home, like we talked about before, the whole point of a Sikh is to part ways with this home. This home dheer guru ka hai, daru pi is samahe. Maharaj saying that this home, this ego is the biggest disease we will ever know. Bigger than any physical disease that we can come across. This home, this ego is the biggest thing. Home dheer guru ka hai, but the medicine can also be found within that. दारू पिए समाहे कृपा करे जा अपनी ता गुर का शब्द कमाहे. Maharaj is giving us the technique to be able to destroy this home. but doing kamai of that Guru, that Shabad, that Gurbani. Nanak kaha sunho janho et sanjam dukh jai. Now, through this method, any dukh that anyone has is going to be obliterated. Gurbani is giving us the complete and utter jugati. You know, sometimes, I'm going to finish off here, sometimes we look everywhere. Give me a jugati to try and connect to Gurbani. Give me a jugati if I'm not sick to then walk on this spiritual path. And sometimes we get fasanad, we get stuck in this trap of having to sit in a certain way, having to breathe in a certain way, doing this posture, doing that posture. And to a certain extent, yeah, these things are going to help us. But it's not the be-all, end-all. Why? It's the same as me getting ready for a hockey game. For me to now have sadhana, a sadhana to appropriate this body for me to be able to focus better, all it really is doing is I'm setting out that fuel so that I can play that game as best as I can. But I still got to play the game. So that jugat of doing that kamai of Gurbani, that's the jugat that is going to transform us. Just like that gold, that shell that was offered to Guru Angad Dev Sahib Maharaj was given back because Guru Sahib said we already have that thing that can transform us within. We already have that thing that can transform anything to gold. That which will give us victory over this mind by that method of striking our homework completely, over and over again like that anvil and that hammer. The question is, are we ready to accept such a jugati? Are we ready to accept such a path? Because like we said earlier, we expect to be ourselves, remain the way that we are, but we'll ask for that uttam padavi of reaching such kan once you leave this left this world. But have we accepted that jugati? That jugati within Gurbani to detach from our pride, to detach from this kam, krodh, lo, mohankar, and to learn how to take strikes to this ego in order to diminish it. Because at the second half of that pankti is Nanak ehe bida har pajo. That with this bid, with this vidhi, Nanak ehe bida har pajo, with this method, ek man ho ek chit. That's how this mind can completely focus in all aspects on that one supreme ichha that we should be having, which is to connect back with the Kalpurukh Vaheguru. Now, no one's saying, like we were talking about before, we have to go out to the jungle, we have to go out to the mountains to achieve this. This can be achieved right in our houses, right in our homes. All it takes is for us to wake up a little bit earlier, or the which 5-10 minutes a day, do that Naam Simran, connect with the Kalpurukh Vaheguru, and we will see those changes occur. I think there's one more slide. One more. And this is the final pankti because I think we run out of time now. The last salok of the talk, which is Swami ko griho jo sada swan tajit nahi nit nanak ehe bidhar pajo ek mane ho chit. Now go to the next one. This is the last one. Tirath bharat ardan kar man mein tare guman nanak nehe pal jaat te jung kanjar isanan. Guru Sahib are basically saying that we might make all the efforts that we want in this world, but then we haven't managed to do that one thing, which is get rid of this pride within our mind, get rid of this ego within our mind. If that remains by the time we have to leave this world, then it's very likely we're going to have to come back, Sangatji. And Guru Sahib is saying that the actions are useless, like the elephant who takes the bath and then rolls around in the dust. Just like we might read Gurbani, we might come to the Guru Card to do Sangat. That's us taking a bath, but as soon as we go back into the world and we start getting involved in Kam, Krodh, Lo, Mohankar again, we start doing Nindya, Chugli, we start lying, we start laughing at people for this and that. That's us surrounding and covering our bodies with that dirt once again. And it makes it that much more difficult to then clean it off. So Sangatji, that is the end of this talk. I've made many mistakes in what I've said, so please forgive me. And if anything I've said has offended or hurt anyone, please know that wasn't my intention. And if you've got any questions, we probably won't have time now, but you can probably see any of us guys, the basics of Sikhi Say with our team downstairs. You can ask any question you want. So we finish off here. Lekh hai kata hai na chutiya, khin khin poolnhar, baksanhar baks la nanak partar, Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh.